This is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to be doing Unit 1, Notes 3. So we are going to be talking about solving inequalities. So we're going to be using actually a lot of the same steps we used yesterday. So why don't you go ahead and get them written on the note sheet. They're already partially written on there for you. So first of all, you want to simplify each side of the equal sign by distributing and simplifying each side. Okay, so you want to distribute and combine like terms on each side so that you can have it simplified on each side. Then you want to collect all your variables, all your letters to one side. Again, remember, if I'm talking too fast, go ahead and pause the video to get it written down. Next thing you're going to do is cancel the constant. Get the thing that's just a number over onto the other side. And last but not least, you'll use multiplication and or division to cancel out the coefficient. Okay, so let's take a look at just some solving equation examples before we hop into inequalities. So remember, the first thing we need to do is simplify both sides. So we need to distribute. Negative 2 times 3 is going to give us a negative 6x. Negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10. And then on the other side, we're going to have 4x plus 20. So what I want to do first is get my x's on the same side. It doesn't matter which x's I bring over where. So since that's a positive 4x, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4x from both sides. Negative 6x minus 4x, well, that's going to get more negative. When you add two negative numbers together, it gets more negative. So when I get negative 10x minus 10 is equal to 4x plus, oops, I don't have that 4 anymore, is equal to 20. So now what I want to do is I want to bring that 10 over to the other side. So since that 10 is being subtracted, I'm going to go ahead and add 10 to both sides. So then I get a negative 10x, and 20 plus 10 is going to give me 30. That 10 is being multiplied by the x, so in order to get rid of it, I need to divide both sides by negative 10. And then I end up getting that x is equal to a negative 3. So that's my final answer for number 1. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 2. So for number 2, we need to distribute that negative 7 into that parentheses and distribute the 3 into that parentheses. So negative 7 times p is negative 7p. Negative 7 times 7 is going to be a negative 49. Then taking a look at the second one, 3 times p is 3p. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And all of that's going to be equal to a negative 17. So now we need to combine like terms. Negative 7p plus 3p is going to give me a negative 4p. Negative 49 minus 12, again, when you add two negative numbers, it gets more negative. That's going to give you a negative 61, and that's going to be equal to a negative 17. So now I need to get that 61 over to the other side. So since it's negative, I'm going to add it. So I have negative 4p is equal to negative 17 plus 61, which is 44. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by a negative 4. So I have 44 divided by a negative 4. A positive divided by a negative is going to give me a negative number. 44 divided by negative 4 is negative 11. So I get that p is equal to a negative 11. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this chart that we're building. So this is going to help you with word problems. So whenever you see that symbol, okay, the alligator's mouth is opening away from the letter. I like to refer to it as an alligator's mouth. So we call that less than. X is less than 6. So if you see that in a word problem, you're going to look for words such as not as much as or fewer than. That will tell you that you need to use the less than symbol. You use the greater than symbol when you see things that say more than. So if you're reading a word problem and it says more than, then you know you need to use the greater than symbol. Now, whenever there's a line underneath the inequality symbol, that means that could also be or equal to. So we have less than or equal to. So what words we want to look for in the word problems are words such as at most or no more than. So these are really good things to have written down because it'll help you with those word problems. Taking a look at the greater than symbol. So the greater than or equal to means no less than or at least. Okay, so all of those help us figure out which ones we need to use in the word problems. But before we jump to the word problems, let's just get some practice using some of those inequalities. So here's one thing that's really, really important to remember. So then if you see at the bottom of your chart, it says, remember to blank. And the biggest thing is that you need to remember to reverse the inequality symbol when multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So that's really important. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, you need to reverse that symbol. So let's take a look at this one here. So the first thing we need to do is to distribute. So we're going to take that and distribute it in. So negative 4 times 5 is going to be a negative 20, and then W. Negative 4 times negative 8, when you multiply two negatives together, it becomes a positive 32, and that's going to be greater than 52. So now we need to do some solving. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 32 from both sides. So I get negative 20W is greater than 20. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation, and when I do that, I'm dividing both sides by a negative 20. And I have alarm bells going off in my head saying, hey, you're dividing by a negative number. So what that means is right now the inequality symbol is facing the W. Because I divided by a negative, it needs to flip direction. So now it's a less than symbol. 20 divided by a negative 20 is a negative 1. So mathematically, this is our answer. Now we want to go ahead and use the number line. So because this is simply strictly less than and not equal to, what I do is I put an open circle on the line. And I'm going to label that negative 1. So because the alligator is facing away from the W and it means less than, we want to shade to the left of that negative 1. So we're going to shade to the left. And that's our final answer for number 3. Let's take a look at number 4. So for number 4, first thing we want to do is subtract the 13 over to the other side. So I end up getting negative 4k is less than or equal to 27. So now I need to divide both sides by a negative 4. Again, alarm bells going off in my head. Because I divided by a negative number, I need to go ahead and flip that symbol around. So now it's going to face the k instead. And I'm going to have 20, or sorry, that should be 14 here. This should be a 14. Sorry about that. So I'm going to have 14 divided by a negative 4. Well, that fraction can be reduced. Both 14 and 4 are divisible by 2. So that ends up becoming negative 7 halves. So you'll notice that this is a greater than or equal to. So when I go to my number line, I need a solid circle. So that solid circle is going to be labeled 7 halves. Now I notice that the alligator is facing towards the letter, which means I need to shade to the right. Okay. All right, let's take a look at a couple more here. So taking a look at number 5. So first thing I need to do is get my x's over to the same side. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Well, 9x minus 4x is 5x, plus 5 is greater than 15. So then I need to subtract 5 from both sides, and I get that 5x is greater than 10. Divide both sides by 5, and then I'm just left with x, and 10 divided by 5 is going to give me 2. Now I didn't divide or multiply by a negative number, so I don't need to flip the symbol. I'm going to have an open circle because it's strictly greater than, and I'm going to label that circle 2. Since it's greater than, my arrow is going to the right for number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. So the first thing I want to do on number 6 is subtract 5 from both sides. I want to get rid of that constant. So I have b divided by negative 3 is less than 5. So b divided by negative 3. Well, what's the opposite of dividing? And that's going to be multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3. Again, I just multiplied by a negative number, so I need to flip my symbol around. So now it's opening towards the b. It's a greater than. And it's going to be a negative 15. Since it's strictly greater than and not equal to, I'm going to have an open circle, and I'm going to label that negative 15. And it's going to be growing this way to the right since it is greater than. Okay? Next, let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 7. So what we need to do here is some distributing. So I need to start by distributing in there. So I get 3d, and then I'm going to take negative 2 and multiply it by 8 and get negative 16d. Negative 2 times negative 9, that's going to become a positive, and it's going to give me a positive 18. And that's greater than negative 2d minus 4. So now I'm going to combine my 3d and my negative 16d, and that's going to give me negative 13d plus 18 is greater than negative 2d minus 4. So what I need to do now is get my d's on the same side. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to add 2d to both sides. Since that d is negative on that side, I need to add d. So I get negative 11d plus 18 is greater than negative 4. Now what I need to do is I need to solve for d. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 18 from both sides. So when I take and I do negative 4 minus 18, that's going to be a negative 22. Now here I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 11. Now remember that when you divide by a negative number, you're really going to have to, flip that symbol. Okay, so then I'm going to get d is going to be less than negative 22 divided by a negative 11. Well, that's going to become a positive because we're dividing two negatives. So I'm going to have an open circle at 2, and it's going to be going to the left. Okay, right now I'd like you guys to try number 8 on your own. Let's say you're really stuck, you really don't get this. Please come up and ask me questions about it so that I can help you. Okay, don't hesitate to ask. All right, let's take a look at number 9. Amusement park charges $15 for admission and $2.50 for each ride. Whenever you see each, typically that means you need a letter. I'm going to let X represent the number of rides you go on. You go to the park with $60. Can you spend more than $60? No, because that's all you have. So I have $60, and whatever I spend needs to be less than or equal to that $60. Well, it costs me a flat fee of $15 just to get into the park. Then, for every X ride that I go on, it's going to cost me $2.50. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve this inequality for X. So I get $2.50. X is less than or equal to 60 minus 15, which is going to give me 45. Divide both sides by 250. And then I end up getting that X is less than or equal to 18. Now remember that I said that X specifies rides, so I'm going to go ahead and label that rides. That X is less than or equal to 18 rides. Now let's take a look at number 10. You have $18.50 to spend on a pizza. Can you spend more than that? No. So whatever we spend has to be less than or equal to $18.50. So it costs $14 just to get the pizza. And it costs 75 cents for each topping. So since we have each additional topping, I'm going to let X represent the number of toppings that we have. So for every X topping, it's going to cost us 75 cents. So I'm going to start by subtracting 14 from both sides. So I have 0.75x is less than or equal to 1850 minus 14, which gives me 450. Now, in order for me to solve for x, I need to divide both sides by 0.75. And I end up getting 6. So x is less than or equal to 6 toppings. That means at most we can spend 6 toppings. We can't get 7 toppings. We can get 6, we can get 5, we can get 4, all the way down to 0. So that concludes your note video for today. Make sure that note sheet is done and go ahead and show me it once you have completed it. Thanks for listening.